Hi, this is Liz with Big Tex Worms and WormComposting.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I'm going to show you how to make a simple Rubbermaid tote style worm bin. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about starting that worm bin and some of the common pitfalls that people encounter with a brand new worm bin. So, very simple to make a Rubbermaid style worm bin. You simply take a bin, whether it be 10-gallon bin or an 18-gallon bin, and you drill some aeration holes in it. That's about it. So today we're going to use a 10-gallon bin and just simply drill some holes in the top. And then I go all the way around the entire bin and I drill holes in the top part of the bin. And I do that all the way around the bin. Alright, so I'm done making the bin. As you can see, that didn't take me any time at all. I frequently have people ask me what size drill bit to use when you make your Rubbermaid tote style bin. The size of the bit does not matter at all. If worms are trying to escape from your bin, it's not the size of the hole that's the problem. It's the environment inside your bin that's not good. So if your worms are trying to get out, it's not the size of hole that you made. Alright? So let's talk a little bit about worm environment, because more important than how you made your bin is how you prepare your environment for your worms. The very first item of business is worm bedding. I highly recommend using coconut fiber, coconut coir, it's often called, as your source of bedding for your starter bin. As you can see here, this is what the coconut coir looks like. It usually comes in a compressed brick and you just rehydrate it, and it's pH neutral, so it's perfect bedding for the worms. It's also hydroponic, so it holds water, so you'll require less watering in your worm bin when you use that coconut coir. So when you start a worm bed, you want to have at least 3 inches of bedding materials at the bottom of your bin. So, like I said, I always use, when I sell a Rubbermaid style bin, I always start it with coconut coir as my starter bedding. What you don't want to use as starter is a bin like this. Number one, this bin would be bad because it's clear. Worms don't like a clear, translucent bin. They like something opaque that's dark, so they prefer a dark environment. The other thing is, you do not want to have bedding like this. A lot of worm sites or novice worm farmers will tell you can use shredded newspaper, shredded cardboard, leaves, dirt from the yard. You can start using this as bedding after your bin is established, but for a brand new starter bin, this would be a catastrophe for your worms, just to have very coarse bedding. The pH is all crazy. This would not be a good thing to use for a starter bin. You want to either go with coconut coir, coconut fiber, or you want to go with peat moss with some shredded eggshells to neutralize the pH. That would be the best thing to do for starter bedding on a brand new bin. So don't make this common mistake of using the wrong bedding as your very first starter bedding. The next thing to consider is food. When you first start a worm bin, you don't feed your worms. You go ahead and, like, you've made your bin, you've done your starter bedding, you've let it sit for about 24 hours to let all the chlorine in the water dissipate. Then it's time to feed. You will put your, it's not time to feed, it's time to place your worms. So you place your worms in the bin and you let them just chill out for a day or two in the bin. You don't feed them, you just let them chill. You just put them on top of that bedding and you just let them chill out in there. Then you're going to feed, okay? And most people want to feed food scraps. I mean, that's the whole point of getting worms, right? To compost food scraps. It's not a good idea to place coarse food scraps in a worm bin because it's going to take them a long time to go through that coarse bedding, coarse food materials. you can put it in there, but if, let's say you were to put this bag of materials in a bin that has about 1 pound of worms, it would probably take them 2 to 3 weeks to compost this amount of food. Even though it's probably only about 2 pounds of food, because it's so coarse, it would take them a long time to break it down. So it's wise if you go ahead and take those coarse materials, chop them up finely, and feed them the finely chopped fruits and vegetable scraps. The other thing you can do is to put your coarse scraps into a compost pile and allow them to decompose for a couple weeks, and then put the decomposing fruit and vegetable scraps into your worm bin and allow your worm bin to eat that pre-composted fruit scraps. So let's say you have a bin that has 1 pound of worms. You're going to feed about 1 cup of chopped fruits and vegetables to start with. And then in a couple days, when all that food is gone, you're going to feed again. This particular bin has 1/2 pound, actually not this bin, but the one that I've already made here, has 1/2 pound of worms in a 10-gallon bin. That's a good size, good amount of worms for a 10-gallon bin. So about 1/2 cup of chopped scraps would be what you would use for a 10-gallon bin. And when you go to feed your worms, I always have a good 1 to 2 inches of newspaper scraps on top of my bedding. That way it will deter fruit flies. So if you're going to feed fresh scraps, you always want to make a little bed to put your scraps on, or a little nest of paper when you go to feed. Otherwise it will make your bin entirely too wet. So I'm just going to place a little nest down here, and I'm going to put my 1/2 cup of scraps here, and you feed in one corner at a time. And then I'm going to put some new fresh newspaper scraps here and cover up that food really good so that the fruit flies don't smell it and don't come. And it's dry paper that you put on top to help moisturize. If you do want to moisturize your bin, you use a little hand sprayer, like a toiletry sprayer, and just spray down your bin. You don't want your bin to get too wet, and the newspaper will help to keep that moisture level correct. So remember, make your bin. You don't need drainage holes in a bin if you start with the right type of bedding, and you feed the right amount of food, and you watch your moisture levels. There's absolutely no need for drainage holes. If your bedding gets real fudgy, real wet, real thick and dense and fudgy, then it's too wet. All you need to do is mix in some dry paper scraps into your bedding, and don't feed for 2 weeks. But that's simply how you get started with a brand new worm bin, and how to feed correctly and start with the right type of bedding. I hope you learned a lot today in our class, little class on how to start your worm bin. Please visit my website at wormcomposting.com for more helpful videos and lots of helpful information on worm composting. And I also sell worms for shipment all over the United States. Thank you for joining us today.